Hi, everybody. Welcome to our virtual event. WTF is going on with sustainability. We're so excited to have you here today. My name is Elena Winters, and I'm one of the co-founders of Women's Tech Forum. I hope you all enjoyed the networking session and had the chance to connect with someone new. Even though we're virtual, it's amazing how we can still build meaningful connections with this platform. A quick note about Women's Tech Forum, as I know we have a number of new folks. We're all about empowering and connecting women in tech, driving important conversations like today's, and creating opportunities for all of us to learn and grow together. So please do connect with us online and in our LinkedIn community to stay in tune with what's going on. I also want to take a moment to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors. We couldn't bring these important events to life without your support. So thank you for making this possible, truly. And a few updates for you all. Capacity Europe in London is coming soon, and we'd love to see you there. Keep an eye out on the chat for the link to register. Also, stay tuned for details on AfricaCom in November. We'll be launching that soon as well. And lastly, a little bit of housekeeping before we dive in. Make sure you've got your bingo card ready to go. You can find it in your reminder email or grab it from the link that Jess has pinned in the chat. Play along, engage, have fun. We've got some awesome prizes to give away at the end. And for today's session, we really want this to be interactive, so feel free to drop questions in the chat, add your favorite emojis. Let's keep it lively and have some fun. We've got a ton of great content lined up, and if we don't cover it all, don't worry. We'll share some extra insights from our experts post-event, so keep an eye out for that as well. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Mercy Manning. Mercy is the SVP of Hyperscale Sales and Sustainability Strategy at Aligned, and she leads their CSR and diversity initiatives. She's also an amazing advocate for women in tech, for not only Women's Tech Forum, but serving as leader for I Am Women and a dedicated board member for Natural Resources. Mercy, we're so excited to have you with us today. I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Elena. It's really great to be here. I've followed and joined as many events with WTF as I can around the world. I'm going to go ahead and just to give you a little background, I do have a long background in energy efficiency technologies for the built environment and specifically data centers. That's how I got into this world. So this is a really important topic to me personally. It's something I've worked on for a long time, and I'm excited to be able to join the stage with some really amazing women that are working on this every day. So with that, I'm going to invite Susanna, Kass, and Sormeh McCullough to join and introduce themselves. So why don't we start with Sormeh?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Mercy. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Sormeh McCullough. I'm Director of ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance at Digital Realty. I've been with the company for about 6 years, based in San Francisco, and I work on our sustainability team. So I help source renewables, help out with ESG reporting, and essentially all things ESG at Digital Realty. I'm so excited to talk about it more on this call.
Great, thanks. Susanna.
Hello, everyone. My name is Susanna Kass. I work for the UN for the Sustainable Development Program for a number of years now, specifically for the data center sector. I have been in the data center industry for over 32 years. I have led over 3.8 gigawatt of clean energy data center projects. So very excited to be with you all today and share about the insights and experience that I have in this field. Thank you, Mercy.
Yes, great. So we had a lot of questions that we wanted to go over, but we also saw the audience had sent in questions. So we're going to try to hit as much of these as we can. There's so much to talk about. We will talk about renewable energy. We'll talk about alternative energy sources that we're all having to look into right now. We'll talk about the targets and the reporting that many of us have opted into on our own and early, and some are coming to the table late on that. We'll talk about efficiency and how we measure things. So just going to cover a whole gamut. And again, if we don't hit the topic, feel free to, we'll try to send out some summaries afterwards to hit on anything we miss. So with that, let's start with just setting the stage, sustainability, and why it's relevant to from the digital infrastructure lens. Why does this matter to our industry? And I always why does this matter to us? We all are spending so many hours away from our friends and family to do this work. So why does it matter to you personally? And why is it so important for our industry? Let's go with Sormeh first, and then we'll go to Susanna.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So data centers, I consider them the central nervous system of the digital economy. So as the world becomes more digitally connected, we bring on new technologies. We have this AI revolution. That demand for data centers become greater. But as we bring on new data centers and more demand, data centers consume a lot of energy. So with that growth becomes more carbon emissions. So as an industry leader, we have a responsibility to both meet that demand and meet our customers' needs, but also work on decarbonizing the industry more broadly.
Great. Susanna.
And for myself, who actually have joined the data center industry before actually the term was even called data center, it was basically called IT labs. So we have a room of computer, look like a warehouse that no one goes in other than we just host a lot of computer. And being the COO for eBay, we actually brought it all up front to the community that people now becoming to understand, oh my God, I'm actually buying things on a whole bunch of these computers that basically process. And going through the evolution in terms of mobile computing, and now, of course, recently AI enabled, and we all have actually done really good in coming out from the lockdown. We all have experienced that now the data center is actually what we call society infrastructure. It touches on the life that actually all government services are doing. This is way beyond Susanna, who have been just focusing on supporting individual companies such as Goldman Sachs, or cloud infrastructure such as Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, AWS, and Apple. It is more than just helping one company to actually help to get their businesses online. It's sincerely running through the entire society that we educate, entertain, and we get productive and enjoy ourselves. And we cannot really survive without it. Why is it important in terms of sustainability? Because of the ecosystem for the end-to-end, it is our responsibility that while we're actually building and designing and operating these data centers, we want to do it sustainably. And my definition of sustainability has actually nothing to do with clean energy. It's more enabling the future generation beyond us when we are gone, say 50 years for me, that it would actually be able to continue to grow in a sustainable manner, meaning that it's better than how we actually had it before. So one of the reasons why I'm actually so involved in it, I'm such a passionate as a clean energy advocate, is for the fact that because of industrial revolution, we were depleting resources faster than we're able to replenish it. And we were using energy so much. That's why we need to be very responsible in terms of when we need to use it, we must be using it sustainably to enable the growth. So 50 years from now, for many of you who will still be around and becoming the leader and whatnot, paving the way for our generation, that we leave things better than where we have it today. And they also too have the choices, just like we all do, can make the choices. And it is our responsibility to ensure that those choices are available for generations to come.
Yeah, I mean, many of you probably know I'm a mom of young kids, and so this is really when I moved. Once I started having kids, I actually moved from regular tech to clean tech many years ago. So I'm like, what am I doing, and how can I use all this amazing technology to actually make sure that things are left, better than when we found them. So, I think that's a good segue. I mean, we started, if we just kind of go back, 10, 15 years, really the focus at that point was, everyone was just building, but then there was a focus starting to go on efficiency. And of course, data centers I mean, we use so much power, we use so much water, or depending on the design, the efficiency is actually, there is efficiency built into the model because it's all of this costs a lot. But I think what I think has been really exciting is just to see the arc of efficiency technologies and how they've made their way into the data center. So can you guys just talk a little bit about, we're going to talk about metrics. Sormeh, you're head of ESG. What are you tracking? What are the new metrics that you're really focused on?
Yeah, it's interesting. I came from the world of energy efficiency consulting for commercial real estate, and we're looking at energy savings per square foot. And so it was a little bit of a shift to come to data centers, and we really don't look at a square footage basis at all. We're looking at our lease capacity, and so our metrics are a little bit different. It's the same concept, but it's just a different type of metric. So historically, data centers, we look at PUE, which is power usage effectiveness. That's the IT energy over the total energy of the data center. So that's kind of how we're looking at it. So as we're saving IT data energy, we should also be working on reducing our overhead energy consumption. So that's, I think most people know what PUE is if you're in the data center industry, but now in terms of sustainability, we're looking at a concept called WUE and CUE, which is water usage effectiveness and carbon usage effectiveness. So we're taking those same principles of PUE, but applying those to WUE, which makes a big difference when we're looking at a data center. You can say this data center consumes, X thousand, 100,000 gallons of water, and this other one only consumes 1,000 gallons of water. Well, that doesn't really tell us much, because maybe this data center uses water-free cooling, or it's using cooling that uses water. And so that makes a big difference when we're looking at, trying to look at an apples to apples comparison, because there's different technologies that are being used based on each data center. So that WUE is starting to be a concept or a metric that we're starting to use more. And there's guidance, more and more guidance being brought out about, how we calculate that, as well as CUE, which is the carbon usage effectiveness. So we're looking at the carbon emissions as a intensity factor for the data center. So that's kind of just, the basics of what type of metrics we're looking, in addition to, the general renewable energy percentages, the scope 1 and 2 emissions that I think, most of the industry and most companies are broadly using to track their sustainability.
Yeah, I think I believe Amazon just made an announcement in the last few months about becoming water. I hope I said this right. Water positive by 2030, right? So this is a huge step, right? Because even when I joined Align 9 years ago, I actually knew the water efficiency guy at Amazon back then, old college friends. So there was one guy back then. Now they have a huge team, right? It's just so exciting to see that that wasn't really even on the radar. And now they're making, huge commitments and really looking at the technologies that they can ship. All of, I would say, the hyperscalers and the co-location industry is looking at how to shift away from water use. And that's to be a good steward, but that's also because we're working in parts of the world that have water scarcity, and where it's actually becoming, extending your project timeline due to permit issues if you're showing that you're using a lot of water. So, Susanna, do you want to add to some of the, I know you've been in all the different roles you've had in the last 30 years. I know that you've been a leader on, on the metrics and making sure that we are actually all measuring against the same definitions.
Thank you, Mercy. So build on what actually Sormeh said, maybe I can take it back a little bit to make it less acronym for the audience. Specifically, I think when we build out the digital infrastructure, just think about we need resources from the environment. Of course, we need the land, because it's a physical infrastructure, even though we're running a digital world. And now we're paying more attention to the materials that we actually use in terms of doing the construction and the design. And one of the key reasons, Mercy, you're totally right about it. I'm actually very obsessive about metrics because we want to make sure that we all can actually help each other for the areas that we're not so good at, for example. Such as, for example, not every company are good at designing, operating, construction, and operations. So we oftentimes, work with each other based on our core competency. So one of the more specific things that we take a look at is what are all the usage, effectiveness of resources that we need to have. And we need to be mindful, whatever we decide to use, be it material or energy, that we need to use it more effectively to achieve what we're trying to do and be friendly with the environment. And one of the metrics we basically measure is really the emission, what we take away and what we send out to the environment. So waste is also a very important metric. So every time we need to use the resources, we want to reduce it from a conservation perspective. While we're using it, we want to maintain efficiency so we can actually use it well. And at the same time, when we're done with using the resources, we also want to be responsible to regenerate so we don't create the landfill problem that we have, and we don't create the problem we have in the environment. Oftentimes you may not be able to see it, but we also be able to measure it, that we are causing harm to the environment if we dump a whole bunch of emission and bad things back out. Be it the consumption of the resources such as energy, or very visible if we need to use water in the design, which we're now designing a waterless data center. And at the same time, the waste, such as the heat waste and actually electronic waste. So we look at that throughout the whole life cycle, Mercy. And as you all know, working in the role that both of you have. And we look at it throughout the life cycle. What are all the resources that we need to use? And what is the effect of that in terms of accomplishing the effectiveness? And also when we're done with it, what do we do about them? Hence, I think many of the metrics right now are designed to support the entire life cycle and be able to categorize it in an area that we can ultimately report back. Are we supporting the 1.5 degree scenario pathway by 2030, which is why many of the companies are making the carbon neutral pledges, and they have their own environmental sustainability report to share with us the scorecard of how they're doing as they progress along the way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on that, can you both touch on just the decarbonization efforts you have underway, both in your operations as well as through your supply chain?
Sormeh, would you like to start?
Yeah, happy to. Happy to. So at Digital Realty, we set a global carbon reduction target back in 2020, and that target is twofold. One is to reduce our direct and indirect, so our scope 1 and 2 emissions, as we call it, 68% by 2030 from 2018 levels. And then we have a secondary target that's to reduce our scope 3, so our supply chain emissions, by 24% within the same time frame. So for that first piece, our strategy is to build, power, and operate more better sustainable data centers. So where from the beginning, we're building our data centers to high sustainable building certification standards. So we're certifying them to things like LEED and BREEAM, which are sustainable building certifications, so that from the beginning, they are designed to be more energy and water efficient than standard data center designs. And then within renewable energy, which is where we spend a lot of our effort here at Digital Realty, we're looking to source renewable power for our operational data centers. So just to give an idea of what we're doing in that realm, putting on-site solar on our data centers will cover maybe 0.001% of our data center load. So because data centers consume so much energy, we can't just look at putting solar on our rooftops to to cover that load. We need to go and source more large scale renewable energy solutions. So that's things like power purchase agreements. So those big wind and solar farms that you might see, driving on the highway, or we're working with utilities to source renewable power within that as well. So right now, about 150 plus of our data centers are powered by renewable energy. We're continuing to increase that as we go. And then lastly is the operational efficiency that we mentioned previously. So we're consistently working to identify energy efficiency opportunities within our portfolio to reduce that operational energy consumption. And then I'll briefly touch on our supply chain program. I'll pass it on to Susanna afterwards. So in order to reach that supply chain goal, in addition, there are increasing supply chain regulations that are coming out globally. And then we also have a diverse supply chain diversity goal as well, to increase our supplier diversity spend and increase our supplier diversity portfolio. This past year in 2023, we launched a formal supply chain ESG program. And what we did is we partnered with a platform called EcoVadis, which rates suppliers. It has a big supplier pool, and it rates these suppliers based on different categories, one being environmental sustainability, another being sustainable procurement, labor and human rights, things like that. And that's been a great tool for us to really look at what our supply chain is doing in terms of these different categories and monitor and track that progress so that we can kind of see what their trajectory is towards decarbonizing their portfolio. And then in addition to that, have these supplier engagements, sit on our annual business reviews and have conversations with our suppliers to understand where they are in their journey, where they're planning to go, what their roadmap is. And so we're continuing to increase our engagement there. And it's been instrumental for us to understand really what our emissions from our supply chain is. Previously, we were just kind of estimating it based on costs. Now we're able to obtain actual data to understand what our supplier emissions actually look like. Yep. So it's been a great program for us. And I'll pass it over to Susanna.
Thank you. That was really excellent insight that you just shared. For this topic for decarbonization, as a computer scientist, we tend to focus on good science evidence, specifically relating to decarbonization. So let me unpack this, what that means. So for data center, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, that we use resources from the environment. And the environment, each of them is basically a scientific material or science evidence. And we look at the carbon metric of each of the different ingredients. So let's focus on power. Many of us look at renewable energy. And by the way, this is really good news for today's preparation. I actually did a check and a summary of all the deals. 84 gigawatt of renewable energy has been contracted since the beginning of 2024. This is really an excellent number for the quantity of the uptake for the digital infrastructure, specifically the hyperscaler that basically raised the ambition. So we continue to actually contract it. And for this year, there'll be 84 gigawatt new incremental renewable energy added onto the grid. So hooray, this is really good. But the just energy transition is essential, but in my opinion, is insufficient if you don't have a carbon dioxide removal program. So just last week, I was with Microsoft at an Austin event called Data Cloud USA, and we unveiled effectively the carbon dioxide removal program that is supported by most of the hyperscaler. Specifically, Microsoft, Google, Meta also joined along with Salesforce.com. And we wish every more organization in industry will also participate, including the colo, hopefully soon. And what we basically talked about is because the grid is not 24/7 hours and 7 days a week being green, we are still burning fossil fuel-based energy source, specifically in transportation. So hence, in order for us to make good to stay on the 1.5 degree pathway, we have to remove those carbon dioxide removal from the environment. So we walked through with Microsoft in terms of the article that got published by National Geographic on the science behind what is carbon dioxide removal means for specifically digital infrastructure. And that include a direct air capture, that also include the bioenergy carbon capture and storage. We're genuinely storing those carbon. And by the way, if we leave it long enough and have high enough pressure, you actually make diamonds. Okay, so the regeneration sometimes actually do provide something valuable, for a long time in that regard. So we go through the specific carbon dioxide removal from the environment, and then we go into deeper than just the energy source, but we also taking a look at the material. So we start talking about a couple of the design that I'm actually very proud of working with Microsoft, especially a timber-based data center instead of using steel and concrete, which is majority of all the carbon comes in from these material. So it's quite a bit of information and resource actually available to you all. If any of you folks are interested in material engineering, material sciences, or perhaps even from a policy perspective, helping us to advocate the use of clean energy, clean material throughout the entire life cycle, including the practices relating to supply chain and actually the building process. As we go along the way, then therefore we can actually create something that I hope we will see more of it. It's called Climate Positive Data Center, and that's basically what we're working on.
That's amazing. Super exciting. I think one of the, it's like there's so many things that we can be doing. And I think I've always taken an approach of, a hybrid approach. Like we need to be looking at the near term, what are the technologies available to us near term? What are the ones that we need to keep on investing in to make available to us, in a few years once those early pilots are done, et cetera. So, with that, can we just go over a few of the, I would say, near-term solutions to help us along the way as the industry develops around, the concept you were just explaining, Susanna. So, like, I'm thinking of, diesel alternative, diesel fuel alternatives. I'm thinking of natural gas. All of these are they're not perfect, but they're steps in the right direction. And depending on where you're located, I know in Europe, there's more accessibility to HVO than here from a supply chain perspective. So just love to get your thoughts on some of the kind of interim solutions that you guys are incorporating and that you like. And then from there, I think we should move on to just the energy landscape in general and some of the new energy technologies that our industry is. I don't think they're new. They're just new to our industry adopting, which I'm excited that we're finally there. So
great. So I can start by sharing some of the net zero design results that we actually have. To summarize, anytime that you actually be able to choose your energy source, start identifying what might be the accessible to you in terms of renewable energy. And if for some reason the location where actually you need to build a data center doesn't have readily available clean energy source, then one of the design that you can do is actually what we call on-premise carbon-free energy generation. So in essence, we're actually creating clean energy right next to the data center when the grid that support your data center are not clean all the time. In supplementing that the wind and the solar are not shining 24/7, we also complement it by using storage. So the energy storage on site or actually using hydrogen to actually store the renewable energy is extremely affordable and effective. And it also works to give back to the grid when you actually don't need to do so. So one of the more specific low-hanging fruit, I guess, Mercy, I think maybe another way of thinking about the short term is the low-hanging fruit that we can adopt and use it today and get some quick wins, is the fact that one should conserve. And we all take responsibility on that. When you look around how you yourself are using energy, do you sincerely need to actually have turned everything on? When you actually conserve, you actually are helping. And data center work the same way. So one of the design we have is called flexible and inflexible load. And that's a white paper that we do work together with Google. And I'm glad to share all the resources I mentioned, by the way, today to WTF. And that way they can make available to you all, be it the metric topic or the renewable topic or what I'm about to talk about. So specifically, one of the key things what we have done is identify what are the load within the data center that don't need to actually consume power. I call them the zombies and the vampire load. If they're not being in use, similar to the resources that is actually taking energy away from you on your cell phone, we shut it down. So we basically conserve and we reduce. And we also got rid of the the diesel generator. We call that zero gen, because if you think about it, why do we even need them in the first place? And being this ex-COO for eBay, I got plenty of those because we were concerned that the grid may not be reliable, and we need to have these standby generator fueled by diesel in the event that we need to still keep our operation going. Well, we practice the concept called availability zone. 3 of us are perfect for that. Each of us can actually mirror to be the live backup of each other. So I just work harder when somehow, Mercy, your grid is not that stable, or we send the load over to Sormeh because we are currently at capacity. So we all help each other in an available zone, which is the concept that is widely adopted by data center. And we all help each other out by being a live backup, mirroring each other from a compute operation perspective. Well, first of all, it's really good because I actually drive the utilization rate higher, get more productivity out of it. And we indeed do not need the zero generator. We not need the generator at all. We don't turn it on. And by doing so, we design out from our design and eliminated the diesel generator. So those are the very practical experience that we can actually do so today. And we use basically energy storage to supplement the renewable energy. And we also use hydrogen as a fuel, and that's actually can be transportable. So it's very, very good. We implement new design called zero gen to get rid of the use of the need of actually having the standby generator. So we save our asset, our balance sheet look a lot lighter. And we frankly do not use any diesel at all. We planned that out, and we still be able to achieve our uptime performance metrics. And at the same time, it actually help out to achieve our sustainability goal. So I hope these are some of the examples that may be helpful for your consideration as you plan out your sustainability design.
Yeah, I think, I think there's also, just to bring up the reality of, if you're doing a self-build, like if you're with a hyperscaler and you're doing a self-build, there's certain, that's, I think, a path that is a lot more accessible. On the provider side, I can say, because I wear these 2 hats of being on the leading the hyperscale sales team, I can share that the contractual requirements that are still very much part of, the colo leases and the requirements that we have to hit still include those generators. So that's why, I think there's an arc there of what we can do when it's your own facility and you can kind of write your own rules versus when you're still playing by somebody else's rules. And so I have seen over the years that some of these, there's been a lot more openness and collaboration between, let's say, like the provider side that I sit on, and then the hyperscaler and end user side. I mean, just an example from this week, I was at a conference in Chicago and with one of the hyperscale teams there. And, we were talking about like just the basic, like most leases are 10 years, let's say 7 to 10 years. Most PPAs are 15 to 20 years. So right there, we have a disconnect that we need to think about how to solve creatively together, because I think the goal is that we are able to go out and source those PPAs to match them against the leases. And so there's a 5 to 10 year gap there that we will all have to figure out how to to solve, right? To make that more reality, or a more realistic path, versus, just continuing to do RECs, which is, has essentially been the default and does serve a purpose, especially for, markets where you're, we were trying to source a PPA in a specific market and there was nothing available. So we had to kind of go back to the RECs. So, Sormeh, can you touch on some of the, in supply chain innovations, or, you had mentioned alternative to diesel, if you're able to use that in some of your locations, potentially in Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, Susanna, I need to pick your brain on the on-premise carbon-free power, because that's an interesting concept, especially now that we're seeing, a lot of markets that are power constrained, and we need to identify ways to bring on new power. And there comes the conversation and the decision of, okay, well, is it renewable or is it not? Sometimes there just isn't a great renewable solution based on various factors like cost, land, time. And so those conversations are being had in those markets like, the Dominion territory, which is in Northern Virginia, which is a big problem, and even Santa Clara, Ireland. So we're seeing that issue a lot. And so that's an interesting concept that you brought up. So I'll speak to you offline about that. But it's also exciting because we're starting to have conversations. I mean, the whole industry is around nuclear, hydrogen, biomass, geothermal, all of these things that we wouldn't, we immediately go to solar and wind as the default renewable solution, but now we have to think a little more outside of the box. But on fuels, yeah, we're doing a lot of, and we're seeing a lot of great new innovations come out. We first launched HVO diesel in France, which is hydro-treated vegetable oil, as an alternative to traditional diesel, but it has 90% lower life cycle emission savings than traditional diesel. And now we've launched this at 15% of our portfolio. So we're starting to see more things like that, as well as things like lower emission refrigerants. Refrigerants can have 10 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide. So when those refrigerant emissions are leaked, that can have a big effect on a data center's carbon emissions. So looking at those replacement refrigerants, which are, it's still not that advanced, but we're starting to see more of them come out as good replacements, one-for-one replacements, and we're starting to evaluate those more and more.
Great. And let's just move on to the energy landscape, because that is what we all think about every day, all day. So what are some of the technologies that you both are pursuing, or if you can say that? So, I mean, I know we're SMRs. How are you looking at natural gas as a Band-Aid? I always call it a Band-Aid, but.
Yeah, we haven't implemented, any of those, but again, we're looking at those and we're starting to evaluate that. In terms of renewable energy, so the solar and wind, we've been sourcing PPAs, or those, large solar and wind farms for, since 2015, but now that landscape is changing. But our standard strategy is that we want to bring on new additional renewables, quality renewables to the grid. So we prefer that we don't go and buy RECs if we don't need to, and we want to bring on those new renewables. So if it's not a PPA, we're working with the utilities on green tariff agreements or retail renewable supply, which we've been expanding more and more across our portfolio. We're doing this in Australia, across Europe, in the US. So that is becoming a more viable option for us as we expand our renewable portfolio.
Great.
And,
Susanna?
Yeah, for myself, from my observation in working now on 17 new climate negative projects bill, they are all AI hyperscale. So these are some of the approach that we have done in our design. Specifically, we look for locations where clean energy is available. We don't necessarily rely on renewable energy, but we basically call clean energy, and that would include nuclear in the mix specifically. I think the data center industry and the digital infrastructure folks are more comfortable with it now. Hence, multiple utility and country actually have very good incentives for us to contract with these nuclear energy, which basically once you build it, the lifetime is actually at least 60 years. So they're all billion-dollar investment, and digital infrastructure companies, specifically hyperscale, are actually funding the projects. Hence, every day we read about the news, the investment now are in billions. Used to, I think there's a lot of money in the millions, but they're all now in the billions, in terms of the announcement. So renewable energy, on-site generation is still something that we absolutely pursue because we have been, and it actually worked very well for our custom build. We hope that we can embrace with the colo market, where you folks play and are leaders in the field. That will be very important. Let's break down the load for a second. So within AI, there is the machine learning load, and they do not need to be in your backyard because we actually place them in the location where we have a lot of hydros. If nothing else, they access hydro, those countries are exporting. So we take them all as much as we can in terms of putting the machine learning AI data center there. And oftentimes they are also in the colder environment. So it really works for us in terms of enabling the liquid and the cooling aspects, which actually bring down to what Sormeh talked about to start, is the usage effectiveness. So many of those designs right now is hovering at about 1.05 usage effectiveness, which is really good. That means that we almost are using a 1-to-1 ratio of what is available from the resource perspective. Then there's the other load called generative AI load, and they are also effective. So 2 weeks ago in Europe, I shared the benchmark with NVIDIA on stage, and I'm really pleased to share with you all today that the performance per watt metric is now becoming to take over more the usage effectiveness, such as PUE. And what does that mean? That means if you use parallel computing on the traditional cloud load, we'll be able to accomplish 100x efficiency on the parallel computing than the traditional CPU load. So this is a lot more effective in that regard, even though the request is taking 3 times more the power because you're using more the engine. So think about you traveling on an airplane versus you taking a bicycle. So it's a lot more power per compute unit, but it's actually creating 100x to more than 100x performance output. So in a lot of ways, we all are upgrading ourselves from the latest technology, but the efficiency of these new appliances or new devices are helping us to keep the global energy consumption at a normal rate. So these are some of the specific design that we actually are using in terms of what I call AI hyperscale, looking at all the different resources. We are absolutely designing waterless data center in the design. And if nothing else, the Amazon and Microsoft and Google, by the way, all 3 of them have a carbon positive pledge, is because every time we actually do need to use the material, not for the design, but actually for the usage of the operation, we measure how much that is and we give it back to the community. Hence, some of the community pledge that Microsoft and Google has made is measuring not so much as a data center, but within the community. So the pledge is looking more than just their own logo and within the fence, is be able to provide a society impact. And I guess last but not least, I'm very proud of this design win. It's we all have watched some Olympic Games recently from Paris, and the entire swimming competition for the water temperature is actually came out from the data center heat of Equinox on that design that we actually have. We're able to capture it and then allow it to the community. And I'm definitely seeing more and more of the heat being reused throughout Europe. So that's actually very encouraging. Instead of letting the heat just escape into the environment, just a couple years ago. So these are all the sustainable design that we actually put in practice to try to achieve towards the 1.5 degree scenario pathway to meet the Paris Agreement for the head of state. And we data center are clearly leading and hope we will continue to lead that at this year at COP.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I think one of the things I'm looking forward to the most, and maybe we can I'll leave everyone on this, but the opportunities for the heat recapture, waste heat reuse that are going to become available to not just, Northern European district heating, situations, but because of the AI design and heat coming off of those systems, we're going to be able to do really interesting things with that waste heat. So whether that's greenhouses, whether that's the district heating, I think, or new energy production, I think that's going to be an exciting thing to watch, both from on the colo side and on the hyperscale self-build side. So let's just go last. I know we're running out of time here. What are you looking forward to the most in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll make it very brief, but I think we're at a really cool time in the digital and data center industry where we're seeing AI, this whole AI revolution. And yes, we have a lot of AI customers coming into our data centers and that growth is expanding, but we're also utilizing AI for our own sustainability purposes. We're building, we just built our own AI tool to identify these hard to find energy efficiency opportunities. So it's a great interconnection and synergy that we're seeing between the two industries.
Well, what I look forward to in the next couple of years is all of you. We need more women in tech to join our industry. We need more young talent specifically to participate in the sustainability journey. One of the specific things I learned from the UN Youth Summit that I actually helped to formulate and shape is the following. It's much easier to work with someone who really believes in sustainability because they care about what the world's going to look like 50 years from now. They may not have a degree in environmental science, but you know what? The literacy is higher than most of the folks that basically graduated from the school because it's real and they really feel it and they embrace the whole sustainability because that's what they sincerely believe in, what the world's going to look like when they grow up. We need more these young leaders to help drive what sustainability is like because they want to live the lifestyle instead of just doing it as a check mark. And we absolutely need more women in our industry. It's wonderful to actually be with you all, which is very seldom for Susanna because oftentimes it's actually populated by men. We just have a different way of actually collaboration. We like to listen to each other. We are sharing our connection and our belonging because we are vulnerable. We like to actually we have no problem talking about the issues and, hey, do you talk about this? And I want to kind of learn from you. How did you do that? So it's a more natural tendency to do it, be able to collaborate. And I think having more women in tech joining the digital infrastructure is a very positive sign for us to be able to maintain sustainability growth and welcoming young generation to be the leader in sustainability is much easier than teaching some old people about what sustainability means.
Well, yeah, I think the learning from each other and being willing to, like you said, be vulnerable, ask questions. That's been honestly a key to my journey in this industry and how I'm still so excited to be here because I'm always learning and trying to surround myself with people that, I can learn from and ask all the questions. So, on my team, I've got 4 out of 5 people on my team are women. So it's very different than when I started many years ago. But anyway, we're at time. Thank you both for joining. I could talk about this. We touched on so many the beginnings of so many topics. So hopefully we can continue this live at the next WTF event, and continue the conversation. Thank you, Elena. I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies. Mercy, Sormeh, Susanna, this was so insightful. It's such an important topic for our industry, and it's so nice to see the three of you come together kind of from different aspects of the industry and give your opinions, and just super, super insightful. So thank you. And I know we didn't touch a lot on the AI aspect of kind of what we had planned for. So I think that could be a great follow-up. So to the community, stay tuned for that. I think we can do a write-up between the three of you guys and have something really awesome to share. So yeah, thank you again. And also, Susanna, to your point, Women's Tech Forum is trying to highlight the women leaders of our industry. So you all being visible is one step in making, it a exciting place for young talent to come in. So thank you again. We appreciate everybody who jumped on today, and thank you again to our sponsors. Without you, truly, we wouldn't be able to have these very insightful conversations. We had a pretty global presence today. We had some folks from India, Brazil, and I think Nigeria as well. So we were able to reach all areas of the globe. And stay tuned again for a follow-up, and keep in touch with us on LinkedIn, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.